Hello, welcome back to the Roundup by News of the Week, the show where I, Jake Whitwell, help summarise and explain the news, helping you to stay informed. Like normal now, this week's news will be split into categories to help aid your understanding and make the episode clearer. You will also have to check my sources on the Spotify. In the Spotify description of this episode and on YouTube as well. With that in mind, I'll get on to the news now. Cheers. So I'm going to go straight in with some stuff on the Heathrow airport expansion, which has been in the news this week. The Independent noted Rachel Reeves has backed the third runway at the Heathrow airport in part of her plan to kickstart growth, which we'll cover in this episode. Reeves made it clear that the government supports the creation of a third runway at Heathrow airport, which was approved in Parliament in 2018. So far, it's been delayed by legal challenges in COVID-19, but Reeves has said that it's badly needed because growth has been constrained by not allowing it. Reeves has said that in going ahead with the expansion, this could make Britain the best connected place to do business in the world. From here, Heathrow will have to secure the approval for the project in the form of a consent order, after which things like value for money, legality and environmental checks will be considered before it eventually goes ahead. In the detail of what the impact of the third runway would be, it would mean the annual flights increase from 480,000 to 720,000 per year. However, it has been met with concern for environmental groups and specifically over the publishing of how it fits into net zero plans, and the project has also been criticised by local communities because it would mean the demolishing of 700 houses and part of the M25 motorway would need to be switched into a tunnel, so it would have a massive impact on the community around it. On this, Ed Miliband noted that the Heathrow expansion won't go ahead if it breaks net zero targets. So we're talking a little bit about those environmental checks I mentioned above. If it breaks those targets, it will not be allowed to go ahead, according to the Environment Secretary Ed Miliband. That this is due to these being legally binding checks on the UK's emissions, and this obviously comes amid Reeves greenlighting the project and speculation of a rift in cabinet over whether it should go ahead or not. So this shows both those and shows some of the contention around it. Despite this, though, he ruled out resigning from government over the split. Just insisted that it needs to fit in the framework for it to go ahead. So it's obviously not yet set in stone. Regardless of that, the business secretary has said the UK cannot afford to not build runways. He said the country needed to stop undergoing judicial review, which checked democratic power. He said the country can't afford to be left behind by not building reservoirs, railways, and runways. He said that it's not good enough that so far some of these schemes have been abandoned, and he reaffirmed the idea of a cabinet split by showing his support for it, but at the moment it seems to be weighing in the favour of building the runway, given we've got 2 reports for and 1 report against. On economics, Reuters detailed Reeves is set to release a pension surplus to fuel growth. Now, it took me a while to find out whether this is actually true or not, and Reuters took this from a Sky article, who took this from speculation over what Reeves might have said in her speech on Wednesday. Anyway, I found it. So what does releasing pension surpluses actually mean? Good question. Essentially, if someone is paying into a pension scheme, there are circumstances where they might overpay, for example, if they're paying off a deficit. This money is effectively tied down to the pension scheme. It's very hard for the individual person to get that money back out, but quite often it sits as part of the pension scheme to cover maybe other investments, or indeed is reinvested by the pension scheme themselves. Now, some of that's obviously quite risky, but it could mean more returns or more security for the pension scheme, which could help those pensioners. But what the government is doing is, as part of wider reforms, it's changing the rules to allow for pension schemes to spend that surplus more easily in the British economy, which could lead to which should fuel growth. It's unclear how this money will be invested, or what it could be invested in. Since we don't know how the money will be invested, there is some risk in whether this move will aid the pension funds or pensioners individually. But it's said to release £60 billion into the economy. The Telegraph covered comments from an ex-Treasury Minister, Lord Agnew, a Tory peer, who reportedly blamed civil service incompetence for the borrowing price surge. Lord Agnew said that in his view, at least half of the increase in national debt is due to the incompetence of civil servants over the last 20 years. Lord Langley previously worked as a minister in charge of Whitehall efficiency. He complained more broadly about money being spent badly, citing examples like HS2 as evidence of this. The Independent detailed that a trade union boss has warned Reeves against trading workers' rights for economic growth. Steve Wright, the General Secretary of the Fire Brigades Union, the FBU, responded to Reeves's desire for growth this week, saying the FBU welcomes the assurance that employment rights legislation will not be scaled back. Wright criticised what he saw as Starmer endorsing Margaret Thatcher's policies. He insisted that the full and swift delivery of Labour's workers' rights reform is critical to getting the country growing. In news on policy decisions by Labour, The Standard reported Yvette Cooper has rejected calls to widen the definition of extremism to include the far left and the manosphere. The Home Secretary commissioned a report in August on the rapid ideological sprint on extremism. Leaked details suggest that the report will say that the UK's approach to extremism should be based on concerning behaviour rather than commitment to an ideology. Examples of this would be spreading misinformation online or engaging in the manosphere. It could also be environmental extremism at the far left. It seems the PM does not classify these as key threats or challenges, as when he acknowledged this, he said that they should focus instead on the key threat of the far right. Aside from this, the report dismissed the idea of two-tier policing and the creation of a new crime of harmful communications laws. The Independent also covered comments from the Education Secretary, who said the Conservatives' law to ban phones is a gimmick. I'm cheating a little because this isn't really government policy, it is just sort of them smacking down an amendment to government policy, but bear with me. She said the Conservative policy was a headline-grabbing gimmick and that the opposition was wrong to say that banning of mobile phones in law would help. She said it's not the only option to reduce the number of mobile phones being used in school. Shadow Education Secretary Laura Trott said that currently guidance is not strong enough, it hasn't been working, and that so it should be made statutory, it should be written into law. The Conservatives, though, were the ones that initiated and issued the current guidance, which isn't legally binding, and could have legislated on the issue when they were in power. That is where their gimmick claims come from. Obviously, now there'll be pressure on the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, to unveil some of the other ways this could be done, but for now, she seems to have smacked down Conservative amendments to the legislation. The Guardian reported on comments by Harriet Harman, who said the government should scrap the automatic right of bishops to sit in the House of Lords. Her argument is that given there are current plans to improve the legitimacy of the UK's second house by removing the remaining hereditary peers, for example, these should not be undermined by the prevailing influence of bishops, so they should also be removed themselves. So currently, 26 bishops sit in the Lords and have influence over the Lords' actions and their scrutiny of policy. No other leader of faith occupies this automatic right as a result of their position as a leader of their faith. It is something specific to Church of England bishops. This creates a situation where it can be seen that the one religion has more unfair influence over legislation than other religions do, and that idea is supported by a YouGov poll which found 52% of Britons would want to see the Lords reformed in this way, while 22% would like to see the bishops being kept. Harman and others who support the bill talked about the possibility of religious leaders being included just more broadly, and regardless, reforms won't be introduced in this Parliament as it was not included in the King's Speech controversially, meaning they won't be discussed anytime soon. The Standard reported farmers have vowed to keep up the pressure on the government over inheritance tax. Plans to change inheritance tax. After protests in England back in December and January, farmers in Northern Ireland arranged tractor runs in order to do this. There were 7 tractor runs in the 6 Northern Irish counties. Representatives of the Farmers Union said they will keep up their pressure to keep the issue of inheritance tax on the agenda. Political officials in Northern Ireland also said they are seemingly united behind the farmers on the issue, while only the government in Westminster remains opposed to inheritance tax changes. Standard also covered the Southport inquiry, on which Reeves has said no stone should be left unturned. The Chancellor said that in order to prevent a similar incident happening again, the inquiry would have to scrutinise the situation in detail. She also said the inquiry would help to aid the parents' understanding of what's happening, hope to bring them comfort through helping them understand. Another focus of the inquiry would be to establish the prevent scheme's role in allowing this situation to happen. She said that it seemed to be due to their focus on ideology rather than extremism, which we've already talked about in this episode. The inquiry will also look at the role of social media companies in not taking down violent content, which can fuel hatred and also help the spread of misinformation. The Telegraph detailed a Labour MP has said Starmer's small boats plan won't work. Long-time Labour MP Graham Stringer has said that he doesn't have any confidence in Labour's migration plans. Well, he took issue with the counter-terrorism style approach, saying that it hasn't worked on gangs in England, and so why would we assume it would work on gangs abroad? He said that there was widespread concern amongst his constituents over this issue, and that he used that to explain his own position. While Yvette Cooper said that the border security, asylum and immigration bill will turbocharge efforts to smash gangs by giving police officers expanded powers, the use of the sort of powers they'd use to combat terrorism and gangs. Ministers have set no formal targets, so the effectiveness of this policy overall could be questioned and likely will be questioned in the end. On foreign relations, specifically the EU reset, The Independent noted a report by think tank The UK in a Changing Europe has warned Starmer over his Brexit reset plan. They said that Starmer's policy on the issue has been vague, that they described it as peripheral and small in scale, so that there's not enough evidence in his reforms for desire for a massive relationship change with the bloc. He said that he's not included the EU in any meaningful way in things like the budget or in the growth plan, so it's unlikely the reset will play a huge role in either of these two things. The Telegraph detailed Reeves is reportedly happy to look at rejoining the EU customs deal. Last week we talked about the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention, a tariff-free trade area. Reeves has endorsed the idea of joining the scheme, provided doing so. Reeves has endorsed the idea of joining the scheme, provided that doing so does not cross the government's red lines on joining the customs union. She also criticised the Tories. She called the proposal interesting and also criticised the Tories' role in not doing enough to aid relations with the EU. HuffPost noted Yvette Cooper has ruled out the UK signing up to a freedom of movement scheme over this, though she sort of said that a lot of speculation has come out about Starmer's Brexit reset plan, with the Youth Mobility Scheme reportedly being a high priority of the EU. Reeves has said that it's not a high priority of the UK. The higher priority of the UK is trade and the reduction of numbers of net migration. And so that starting off on the position of youth mobility would not be a good starting position for the government. In USA relations, The Independent noted that the White House has confirmed Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to the US for the UK. After a few weeks of speculation about Mandelson's acceptance and the relationship between Trump's team and Starmer's team, he has been confirmed. Likely be a relief to Starmer's team, but it's crucial that a member of Trump's team has said that Mandelson will be kept on a short leash in relation to his previously close relationship with China. HuffPost detailed a poll has found that UK voters would rather have a trade deal with the EU rather than the USA. A poll of almost 15,000 adults found 46% of Brits would want to focus on the EU for trade, while only 22% would want to focus on the USA. On a constituency level, this would mean 73 constituencies, including the 5 Reform UK seats, interestingly, would support the idea of trading with the EU rather than the USA. On news on the USA specifically, the helicopter crash killed 67 people, and Trump came out and talked about the problem with DEI policies in its aftermath. After being critiqued online and in the traditional press over the lack of evidence supporting his idea that DEI pilots caused the plane crash, given we don't know the names of the pilots, he qualified his view. Trump said instead that DEI could have been the reason for these policies. Also, Sky News reported that Trump has threatened Canada with trade tariffs, saying once again it should become the 51st state. a cherished state. Trump has imposed 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. The two countries have proposed counter tariffs on the USA. Trump has reaffirmed his confidence in American industries like lumber, energy, and car manufacturing. However, experts have said that industries like lumber could actually be at risk by these Canadian tariffs, or these tariffs on Canada, and then vice versa. Trump said that Canada's membership with the USA would result in lower taxes, better government, and things like that. It's been rejected by a Canadian politician. In global news, The Guardian noted the Rafah crossing has been reopened for Gazans after months of it being closed. It is not open for anybody. It currently is open for injured children. 37 sick and injured children left Gaza through the Rafah crossing for treatment last week. The Rafah crossing, the only route out of Gaza not connected to Israel, has been shut for 9 months. The opening of it is a significant part of the ceasefire and marks an important step towards the end of the conflict. It is currently only open for medical cases though, and it was not a clear stipulation in the ceasefire, so it is still an ongoing process. In other news, The Independent covered RFK Jr.'s testimony in his confirmation hearing. He was criticised over his prior comments on vaccines and autism. The testimony was emotionally charged and it surrounded his views, accusing him of endorsing outdated and retracted sources. In part of the hearing, he was asked whether or not he would say unequivocally that measles did not cause autism. Kennedy said he would if the data was presented to him. The IR detailed neurodivergent people on benefits will be helped into work to cut the total welfare bill. Citing employers' reluctance to introduce adjustments for disabled people in work, Stephen Timms said that this will be addressed in March. This can reportedly lead to huge work gains and more people in work. Currently, the rate that people with autism in work is 31% compared to 54.7% of all other disabled people. So there's clearly work to be done here. The Times reported business confidence has fallen to its lowest level in over a year. Lloyd's barometer for business confidence showed that confidence falling a further 2% to 37 points in January. This is the 5th consecutive month of decline in business confidence. And that concludes the news I got this week. I hope you found it interesting and useful. Thank you very much for listening and watching. It means a lot to me personally. If there's anything you feel I got wrong or would like to challenge me on, please bring it up in the comments and I'll explain where I got this from, or maybe how I got it right. Or if I got it wrong, I'll stand up and say that. I'll even try and edit this with it in if there is anything. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you next week. Bye.